Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of The Family Business, where we talk about how family and careers are intertwined. I am happy to announce that I was able to get Mike and Colby Holtshouse, two of my favorite folks, exceptional medical device professionals, along with being significant human beings and great parents. Welcome to the show, guys. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Matt.
Yeah, you guys were easy. I mean, I thought of you almost immediately when I started doing this, and I had to work with your agent a bit to get you on, but here we go.
But yeah, the schedule's aligned. Yeah.
The 6-year-old does have bargain on our negotiating fees. So.
Yeah, I don't want to deal with your daughters. They're too rough for me. So could each of you take about a minute and just give me a quick thumbnail of what you're doing and give a little insight on your career just for a minute tops, and then we'll get into some of the stuff I know about your family and things about your careers.
Okay. Want to go first?
Sure. I'm Colby. I currently work with a company called Lydia Health. We have a medical device for postpartum hemorrhage, which is abnormal bleeding after childbirth. And it's a super exciting time at the company. We've been working towards commercialization. I don't want to jinx it, but there's a chance that by the time this airs, we might even have good news from the FDA. Hopefully my regulatory consultant is not watching. But it's been a really fun ride for the past 2 years to develop the clinical evidence, get the product ready for market, and start building up our team. I'm currently the COO of the company and have oversight over marketing and clinical, and I'm looking forward to building out our sales function and having a commercial product. It's really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, the technology is amazing. From what I had read, it's interesting how sometimes you're so uninformed about a particular topic. Even though I read about medical devices every day, I had no idea that it was the leading cause of fatalities for mothers, and just was stunned. I just was reading it and like, wow, I would have never thought that was it. So I'm thrilled that you're behind this. Because technology is going to make a huge difference. Mike, how about you?
Yeah, so I currently work for a company by the name of Merge. It's a cloud-based software application that helps manage implantable cardiac device data. So in that world, the patients with pacemakers and defibrillators and so forth transmit their data wirelessly to the cloud, and we provide a uniform platform to enable an efficient triage and review of that information. So I currently run our commercial organization, operations organization, so focus a lot of my time on EMR integration. So Matt, if you have any questions on how that works, or if you want to help put someone to sleep, I can help talk about that. But it's a really exciting time for the company, just like Colby's talking about some exciting times for her and Lydia. Merge, we just continue to grow and have been continuing to add people and grow through the pandemic. So we're extraordinarily lucky to accomplish that.
I've been doing this for my 18th year, and EMR has always been a bit of a Loch Ness monster or a myth, a little Sasquatch running across the screen, because I'd always heard that, this is coming. It's going to be paperless. And it's 18 years and it still hasn't happened. I mean, is this going to happen? Are we going to see the abominable snowman?
I wouldn't hold your breath.
Okay. You know this is going to be aired. Other people are going to watch this, right?
Well, I mean, we could talk about all of that, but it's really interesting. I think that there's an opportunity to kind of do some further standardization and make, if you think about like interoperability, I think that's going to be key to, as we think about what the EMR should look like going out into the future and the way that we interact with health data. Right now, it's all very siloed into, a handful of really big companies. So
yeah, I mean, I think people get real territorial, I would think.
Oh yeah, for sure.
All right, so with all our conversations between the three of us, I've never heard of how you guys met. And not to get too romantic here, so take it easy, but how'd you guys get to know each other?
Yeah.
It all goes back to a Bennigan's.
It does.
How romantic.
Yeah.
We worked at Guidant together,
right?
In sort of different sides of the finance organization, and somebody was having a going away party, a going away lunch.
That's right.
And we just randomly sat across from each other.
Right.
And I remember just having one of those conversations where you're like, where did that guy come from? We have so much in common. That's so interesting.
What'd you have in common?
We skied together. We'd skied in the same places growing up.
That's right.
I think we both liked Volkswagens.
That's true. Yeah.
Who do you remember from that lunch?
Yeah, no, I was just happy to talk to somebody relatively close to my age and single. I was like, this is very exciting.
It's a novelty.
Wow. Really a high bar.
I was gonna say. Yeah, like let's move on. So, all right, so let's explore the
workplace romance. It took many months to evolve from friendship and sort of seeing each other casually to starting to think maybe there was something more interesting there.
Well, it was also I don't know if it made it more complicated, but she was working for a lady that was you were working with Matt. Yeah, right, exactly. Working for a gentleman named Matt. I was working for a lady named Lisa. Matt and Lisa were actually married. So it was sort of this like, how do we continue to have this budding relationship at work and try to keep it under wraps, given that our bosses were married? So it was pretty interesting.
Our bosses were married to each other.
Right.
And then there was a period of time where we think they were trying to get us to potentially swap roles. So that was tricky because they were both sort of laying the groundwork for that. So then we met up to talk about that. And then Mike ended up taking my role and I went out into the field. So I was training him. And that was the last time we ever worked directly together. It was really nice for a couple weeks of transition. And then we said, that's good. Okay, from now on, we'll work like just a little bit further apart.
I mean, I met my wife at work also. So we have that in common. I don't know if we've ever covered that. So did you have like a big reveal? Like how did you handle telling everybody?
Yeah, I remember when I told Matt because
I remember when he called me after that conversation.
Yeah, exactly. So Colby had moved out into the field, and so we felt comfortable not being in the same office that this was okay to tell people. And I remember telling it was met with quite surprise, a lot of surprise, a lot of shock. He looked truly in disbelief that this was happening, to be honest.
Jeez.
And I mean, yeah, I wonder how that reflects on us.
Yeah. Well, if you want me to be perfectly honest, this is all editable, right? So I think he looked at it more from the line of, why is Colby interested in you? I think is the way that he looked at it.
Yeah. I married up too, and I had the same scenario. I always tell Colby, my wife's a redhead. She's very similar mentality. It's just funny. I mean, we have some commonalities. So I forget the girls' ages. I know you obviously have two. How old are the girls now?
9 and 6.
Got it.
I got it.
So
9 and 6, first and fourth grade.
So I'll give you guys a little insight. Colby is a terrific follow on Instagram. She seems to find creative outlets for her girls who are a bit high spirited, the younger one in particular. So, I mean, you send some really funny stuff. So I'm curious, like, what prompts that? Are you, do you ask her if you can post things? Like, I always have to ask my kids if I put things on, or how does that work? She's a funny kid.
That's a great question. I don't ask yet.
Yeah.
I do have a private channel, so I don't feel like I'm, broadcasting her spirit to the whole world. But I do, they're starting to ask about social media. We're really fortunate that we have an au pair right now. We've had over the past several years au pairs who live with us who are these like really wonderful women who come from outside the country and they're in their early 20s, and they're wonderful caregivers, but also sort of like a big sibling to the girls, and they've taught them about things like social media. And now when I get my phone out, they're like, are you on Instagram? What are you doing on Facebook? So I can see that permission stage might be inevitable.
Sooner than later.
But as of right now, I mean, I don't have to work very hard to find comedy out of those children. You just
between that and
they're my descendants, so they're hilarious.
Yeah.
And
between that and the dog and everything that's got going on in that house, there's a lot of opportunity for comedy. That's for sure. What's the wackiest thing that they've ever done? Can you recall?
Ooh.
Ever?
Well,
I mean,
you may not have posted or not, but I mean, I've seen some interesting photos of all kinds of stuff.
That's a good question.
I mean, just
so recently they have taken on the quest to try to sneak up on mom and dad and scare us.
Yeah.
At all times during the day. And, you know, in this office, there's a little air conditioner that kind of runs when it's hot. And so it's very hard to hear somebody sneaking up behind you. And I think they've gotten you a couple of times pretty good. So they're starting to get very good at that, which is really a lot of fun. Also,
they video
just,
it?
you know, I'm going to try. I'll get some video and we'll get this.
I was going to give you, like, not only are they crazy, but, you know, we've all been locked in the house, right? It's been quarantine. It's been just crazy times. We've been on Zoom all the time. So everyone's getting to see our families. And I am particularly scarred by an interaction we had early on where we were trying to do some team building. I got the team together for just a casual lunch, and one of our board members, you know, said he was free to join. And this guy's really friendly with the company and a lovely individual, and drops in, you know, when we're in the office. So he dropped in for lunch on Zoom. And during the quarantine, he has grown a really fabulous white beard. And so I'm in the kitchen, I'm making lunch, and, you know, making lunch for the kids and talking to the team. I got the board member, and the kids are up in the screen and they're really interested in this board member's beard. And the next thing I know, I look over and Avery has taken the bagel with cream cheese that I've made her, and she has created a beard for herself, and she is showing it off in the camera, like, look at my beard, look at my beard. And I'm like, oh my God, we can stop, someone turn the video off. Like, that was a real low moment for me in the quarantine. I'm managing the different people and personalities.
There are a lot of Zoom bombing with the kids.
I didn't take any more lunches for the kitchen.
So it's an interesting thing to have a mom that's well educated and successful and just driven like you are. How do you think that reflects on them? Like, have they ever sat down with you? Because they're still young, but how do they have like conversations with you about, you know, can I be like you? How do I get to be something with a C in front of my title, or whatever it is that they in their mind connect to success? Like, how do you have those conversations? They're watching you, you know they are.
I feel like that's one of the areas where you really see your kids' different personalities come out, right? I feel like my older daughter watches and she's like, how do I not work as much as you? How do I have a job where I can take care of animals and, you know, do science and maybe draw, like just do artistic, creative things? Like what you're doing does not look that great to me. But the younger one is like, how do I become the boss? I already am the boss. So how do I ensure that everybody else knows that I'm the boss? So, you know, I feel like I have a challenge to teach the older one that, you know, hard work leads to your, you know, your enjoyment of working with animals or working creatively. Like, all those things still take hard work. And then I try to teach the younger one that actually being the boss is about being nice to people and convincing them to do what you want them to do rather than forcing them to do what you want them to do.
She just stare at you?
Yeah. She's like, no,
that's not going to work for me.
You right now. So.
But I'm telling you, I'm the boss. So can you get me lunch?
It's the best.
Exactly. And that's also a parenting moment of like, gosh, I guess I have to, you know, eat my own dog food on that one and work harder to convince them to do the things that they need to do in the house rather than just telling them, you know, you got to kind of treat your kids like your team. And we do use a lot of team language around here to try to, you know, especially with quarantine, we all need to pitch in on cleaning. We all need to, you know, help deal with the fact that we are limited in what we can do every day.
How does that work? Do they help?
There's a lot of incentivizing going on. But yeah, I mean, usually I think we've had a lot of success with, as we were talking about earlier, the new cats. So we adopted 2 kittens. It seemed like the thing to do in quarantine. Everybody's adding pets to their family. So the litter box, right? It's like, we just drew a firm line from day one. It's like, mom and dad are not responsible for the litter box. Like, we'll help you if it's really bad, but you need to change the litter and scoop it and take care of it. And they've been pretty pretty good about that. And it's just nice to know that if you really do sort of reinforce it and just make it part of the routine, that they'll do it. So
yeah, that's funny. My kids never do it. It literally never. Mounds and mounds of cat excrement. And they refuse to go in the box. The other cat, she's does target practice on everything but the box, and the kids just ignore it. I'm like, how do you ignore the stench? How? And my son just goes like this. I don't know. Like, the best. Yeah, no,
it's gross. This is the first time I've ever had cats, Matt.
Yeah, me too.
I agree with you on that. It is not pleasant what comes out of those animals.
No. I like when you're in the room when they happen to be going, they just make eye contact with you. Like, yep, and you're gonna be cleaning this up later.
They're like so earnest. They're like,
it's enough to make me just leave the door open outside. Anytime you guys want to go, just let me know.
Can I help you?
I know how competitive it is in the Bay with education, and Colby, I know how education is with you, and Mike, I'm sure you're the same. How do you get it so they're into school and they're looking to excel, but education is not something that is pressurized and they become fixated on, I have to go to Stanford. I mean, I realize they're young, but it probably starts early in the Bay, I would imagine. How have you done it there? Have they asked you where you go to college? Did they even talk about that yet?
Yeah, well, definitely for Colby, having gone to Stanford, and it's in our backyard. And one of the great things about that is just their athletic program. And so, just the number of like women's soccer and swimming and basketball, and just we've been to baseball games, and it's just, so they really kind of get to, that's sort of how they're interacting with, Stanford as a university at this point. From an educational standpoint, I don't know that they have too much of an awareness on, what that really means, but
like elite schooling as an aspiration, we haven't quite laid out.
Yeah,
I think
but they're just too young. I don't think they're quite
young
there yet. But to your question about the competitive nature, I think we're lucky to be in a school district that it's a very neighborhood-centric school. And luckily, just in the parents that we interact with and their children, we all sort of have the same sort of frame of mind, which is we don't want to make it about being competitive right now. I mean, there's going to be plenty of that to come as they get older. But, right now it's about getting into and enjoying school and enjoying the process of learning and figuring out things that you're interested in, and understand that you have to do things you're not interested in, which is a challenge for Avery. That's kind of, I think we're a little bit lucky in that regard. There are definitely schools in the Bay Area, to your point, Matt, where it is all about, competition and output and performance. And yeah, you could definitely go down that path. So I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I grew up in such a different environment where I went to a private school for 12 years, which was, very focused on getting you into a specific school. And in some ways it does, like, this feels unfamiliar to me to be in a public school system where it only is 1st through 6th grade. And so it's hard to even see the end goal. But at the same time, like, I really go back to the school that I went to had this sort of, in lower school, the 1st through 4th grade, your only goal is to learn to love learning, and you got to love reading, you've got to embrace, developing your curiosity, and don't worry about the rest of it. And we've tried to take that approach with them and let them explore, whatever sports you want to play is fine. You want to do after school sewing this quarter, and then after school art next quarter, and drama the quarter after that. Like, all these things are fine. Just try it, whatever you think is fun. We don't really think that our kids are going to be playing soccer for Stanford, and if they don't play on the club team in 2nd grade, that's really fine. We'd rather have them trying a lot of different sports and figuring out what they can, get passionate about. And I never thought that our older daughter would be all excited to play basketball, because she's a little bit shy, and she doesn't seem as aggressive physically. So I wasn't sure she was going to get out there on the court and want to knock people around. I thought maybe a sport with a little more space might be better. That's how I feel about soccer. Like, everybody stays a little bit further away from me. I like that. She loves basketball. She just wants to be, like, in the mix. Yeah. And it's been really cool to see her sort of try things out. And so
I think that's growing up, didn't you, Colby?
I mean, I practiced, I sat on the bench. I was really good on the bench.
Like
I
a
was great.
professional bench.
I was like I was holding it down. I think it's really hard to be a tall woman, you know, because I was super tall by 8th grade, and the PE teachers were like, that one, we got to get that one on the basketball team. And 2 years later, they're like, it's hopeless. This is not working. There's a dimension. Like, you can move both horizontally and
we'll get you a chair on the other side of the bench. No, I got you.
Yeah.
Now, I've followed both your careers. I know them fairly well. And I'm curious about the choices you made, because some of them held quite a bit of risk. And you had the girls at that point. I don't think you guys were, this was before kids. I think it was after, if I remember the cadence right. So either of you, let's talk a bit about that, like the choices that you made, knowing that you have a family, and obviously the cost of living in San Francisco and everything that goes along with it. How much of it was a family-related decision with the choices you made versus career?
That's a good question.
Causing us to second guess all these things, Matt.
That's the plan.
Well, I mean, I have to say, for me, coming out of Stanford and graduating in 2000, you know, I spent my college years with the .com boom, sort of knowing, of course, I'm going to end up working for a startup, but then graduating right as the bust was happening and being a little bit more risk averse at that time, I really wanted to get some formal training. And so I did investment banking, and then, you know, the economy was really in tatters, and I ended up at Guidant, and then I went to business school, which is like the ultimate risk averse move, but still a wonderful experience and very valuable. And then I was like, okay, now I'm ready to go to a startup. And people gave me great advice. You're not ready to go to a startup because you've not worked in marketing and launched a product, and no startup has the bandwidth to train you. So you've got to go do the marketing side. So then, you know, I've got finance, I've got sales, and then I went to Medtronic and worked in marketing, learned a ton. But by that time I was just like, I've got to get to a smaller company. Like, I've been dying to do this for so long. And I remember, you know, we were at that point starting to work on having a family. And I was like, if I don't go now, I'm going to get stuck. You know, we're going to have a baby and I will literally never leave this place. I loved a lot of things about Medtronic and the people who were there, but I just had this like desire to go do it. And Mike was also working Medtronic in a totally different division. And I was really lucky that he was super supportive of me, you know, making a job change while we were trying to have a baby. He's like, are you prioritizing this? But no, we really, you know, we thought seriously about it and decided that if I didn't sort of do it then, it would be hard to ever do it. And once I got on that path, then it sort of, the startup world kind of took over, and it was too fun to ever go back. But I think the surprise is that you ended up in startups too. That was not planned.
I was just thinking that exactly the same thing, right? Because, you know, again, I worked at Guidant, I worked at Medtronic, obviously huge companies. And yeah, it was this desire for me. I was a CRDM sales rep, so selling pacemakers and defibrillators, and just that nature of that job is it's a very highly service-oriented sell, right? So you're constantly on the phone and going places at all hours of the day and night, and you're on call, and it's just one of these, you know, very demanding jobs. And having a desire to want to do something outside of that. And my goal is never, to your point about wanting to go, oh, I need to go do something in a small company. But I ended up at iRhythm being recruited there. And while not a true startup in the sense of like only, you know, 5 or 6 people, by the time I got there, they had 20 sales reps and were commercial and so forth. But to kind of live in a much smaller environment relative to like a Medtronic, it really did kind of feel that desire. And, you know, to come to Merge, where we literally, I think when I started, we had maybe 10 or 15 people, like a true, you know, early startup where we're trying to make this work. And yeah, it was super exciting. And there were definitely lots of times, you know, in these years of, you know, planning your move to a small company and children and wanting to make a move where you realize that you just don't necessarily have the ability to just jump ship whenever you want, right? And you kind of have to just kind of, you know, wait for the right time. And, you know, whether that's from a family perspective or a career perspective. But that was a tough lesson for me to learn, for sure, because, you know, I just wanted to rip the Band-Aid off and just go do it. But there are certain realities when you start having children that, you know, you can't ignore.
A little more planful about, you know, okay, if I'm going to leave this job, then I need to make sure that I have a plan. Either I'm going to another full-time job or I have consulting income, and you know, I've felt super fortunate to find the world of startup consulting to be a bridge between companies, because it gives you the backstop to take on more risk, knowing that things don't always work out with startups, but there's this wonderful community out there of, you know, people in your network and, you know, people in other startups who always need some help. And so that's been a way to sort of mitigate some of the risk and make us feel more comfortable continuing to do the early stage work.
It's not a coincidence, Colby. I mean, you guys both have a great reputation out there. There's no luck involved with consulting. It's because they know who you are. I don't mean to burst your bubble with the whole luck thing, but that's not really what it is.
Well, you know, we try to practice gratitude because there's so much luck, right? I mean,
well, listen, it's a function of timing. I've always felt, because the opportunity's there, and if you happen to be available or open to that conversation, and then it happens. So there is some good fortune that happens with that, but so much of it is what you do with it. You know, I've always been a believer in that, you know, a lot of people get their doors knocked on. Some open it and some don't. And that's really where the difference is. Now, you've worked at some kind of funky companies as far as indications and therapies and technologies. So I got to ask, how do you explain to your kids what you do? At both your last company and this one.
Yeah. Well, you know, I reflect that I'm really lucky that the girls couldn't read at the time that I was at the last company, because now they do pick stuff up off my desk, and, you know, they grab the device, which I keep nearby, and they're like, where does this part go? And I'm like, well, this goes in your vagina. And Mike is really good about using all the correct anatomical words, which is a philosophy that we've developed, you know, since I've been working in women's health for 8 years now. I mean, since shortly after Calla was born. And, you know, raising women or raising girls to be women and working in women's health, and, you know, going back to your point early in the discussion that, you know, a lot of the problems that women face in the healthcare world are not discussed. You know, we don't recognize the symptoms. We don't know that they're common problems. We don't have language to describe what's happening. You know, your doctors are not asking you if you're suffering from these things. It's so important to me to educate not just my daughters, but like my friends, my acquaintances, people I just met, people that Mike would rather that I didn't talk to all the time about this, but, you know, he's always kind of arriving at a cocktail party and discovering what I'm talking about and like turning around. And certainly, you know, when I worked in bowel control, that's, you know, an underserved area, but, you know, it's also full of opportunity for humor, and we never laugh at patients' expense at all. However, you know, poop is funny. And so we spend
never not funny, Colby.
in the house. I mean, poop is funny even from...
And maybe mine.
All right, so I have this vision in my head of your kids being at the lunch table and say, "You're not going to believe what my mom does."
Right.
I've always wondered what they say.
And then when you change jobs to where you are now, they must be like, "You got to hear what she does now. You thought the last one was crazy?" Yeah.
Well, this one is actually a much easier emotional story because, you know, when I travel, we sort of talk about how moms really need this therapy because we need moms to be healthy so they can take care of their babies. And, you know, I really feel strongly about that part of what we're doing is improving the birth experience. You know, if you can have a less traumatic, you know, less invasive experience in treating complications after birth, that's better for your relationship with your baby because you're getting started, you know, and that's our mission. We're early in the development of the therapy and seeing where it will go, but our mission is to make childbirth safer and just an overall better experience for moms, because that's where you're starting, you know, building your family. And I think everyone, you know, it's the cocktail party story again, that every time you go tell people what you do when you work in postpartum hemorrhage, everyone has a story about their birth experience. Not necessarily that they experienced hemorrhage, but something happened that they didn't expect. Something happened to their friend that was traumatic. Something, you know, something that really stays with you and you don't know if it's normal and you worry about it and you carry anxiety. And I think we have a responsibility to break that down. And so I'm committed to telling my kids what I do and plain language and getting them comfortable with it and saying the word vagina, you know, we say that.
So it reminds me of a story when my daughter was 4. We had the same philosophy. I never called it a hoo-ha or whatever. There were no names. It was your thumb, it was your nose, and it was your vagina. And my son was his penis, and that's it. I just don't play in that sandbox. So we get a call from the school, from the teacher. Olivia said something today, and I'm like, yeah. Meanwhile, I'm working away because I know she probably said something that made people uncomfortable because I know my daughter, and she's really has a big vocabulary. I said, yeah, she does. What happened? Well, she said she wasn't feeling well and her vagina hurts. And you could have counted to 50. There was just no sound. I'm like, so my favorite thing to do is not say anything in those scenarios and just let the silence hang. And the teacher's like 1001, 1002. And finally she goes, well, she's a little young. I said, to have a vagina? She said, no, but to use that word. I go, well, isn't that what it is? So, the teacher and I really didn't hang out as much anymore. Did you get a call from the school or no?
What's that?
Did you get a call from the school or no?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
The day is young, Colby. The day is young.
The day is
young. Yeah.
I mean,
We'll see what she says at our next Google Meet.
It's the best. I mean, you guys are one of the people that I thought of when I first started doing this. Somebody had suggested couples when I first was just going to do individuals, and you guys were very high on my list. So I genuinely appreciate it. You're just always so open in our relationship. You've always just told me everything. And so I thought you'd be great. And, well, I like being right once in a while, and this was one of those times. Did I miss anything? Are there any stories or antics?
You mentioned earlier something that kind of struck me, which is sometimes you just have to be open to opportunity. And I think back on how we first connected, and I'm sure I just took a random call from you. And I don't even remember the day that I did. But it's really amazing to see, relationships develop over many years from just being open to calls and opportunities. And I'm grateful for the opportunities that you've brought me and the people that you've brought me. And it's all about in this little med device world. It's such a wonderful community. And I love being sort of connected to the people, and, Mike and I have overlapping networks. But it's great to have, people like you and the opportunity to open doors and always learn about new things. So I encourage everybody who's listening to, take the calls and hear what's out there.
That's exactly what we always say. It's funny, when I met Colby, we had met over the phone a bunch of times, but you happened to be down here for a conference.
Yeah.
And the fact that you showed up at breakfast, it was early, 7:30, 8 o'clock, and there was like zero makeup,
Mike is
zero
laughing because that
pretense.
is not my high quality time.
You were dragging a suitcase, and I'm like, this is my kind of people. She could care less about any of the nonsense. We just ate and talked business and about our lives a bit, and there was nothing formal about it. And I think that's why I've retained the relationship, is because I've always found you just easy to talk to. And then you got this guy and brought him along, and he's been just a great mix to the bunch. It's been a pleasure, really. So thanks so much for joining. I cannot tell you how much I'm looking forward to this being out there so everyone can see and learn a little bit more about the Holtshouses. Thank you for joining on The Family Business, where family's what binds us. You guys take care. Give my best to the girls.
Will do.
Well,
Thanks,
you,
Matt.
Matt.
Take care.
Take care as well.
So
See ya.
fun.